left off on page 674, trying to get at least to page 700 by the end of the week. We should be able to do, I think. And I don't know about you, but I'm a little confused because after all this, after all the progress that we were making between Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, Sancho dropped a bomb last 2 chapters ago and said, I want to go home, pay me what you owe me. And Don Quixote said, okay. And then Sancho said, oh, and by the way, it's been 20 years since you promised me an isle, so I need some compensation for that. At which point Don Quixote lost it and shamed Sancho rightly. And Sancho fell down and said, all I need now is a tail pinned on the back of me for me to be a total ass. I'm so sorry. And then somehow they find a duke and a duchess. Well, it's the duchess first doing her birding in the woods. And she takes them back to this actual castle where there's an actual duke who has read about the story of Don Quixote and loved him and wants to welcome him to his home, understanding that he thinks he's a knight. And so he's treating him at his castle as if he's receiving a knight. And all of this seems fine, except Sancho is secretly trying to figure out a way how he can escape with undetected and not have to give excuses to Don Quixote for why he's hightailing it back home. And in the meantime, there's this priest at the feast at night who decides to, after Don Quixote talked a little bit, insult him, tell him he's a buffoon, tell him there's no such things as knight errants or enchantments or anything. To which Don Quixote replied. Colleen, are you up for a little more reading?
Oh, wait. So,
Yes.
how old was Don Quixote when they first leave for the adventure in first part?
Like late 40s.
So after 20 years, it's probably like.
But it's not 20 years. That's why Don Quixote got so mad. He did his first sally. It was like 2 weeks. He comes home. He decides he needs a squire and a better gear. That takes him a couple of weeks. He puts that together. He takes off with Sancho. They're gone like 2 months, 2 or 3 months. He comes home. They put him to bed. They won't let him look at his books. That's like a month. Then Sancho comes back. We need to go out again. So even if that's 2 months, the whole thing altogether is like 6 months.
Half a year. So
now, where we get confused time-wise is because 10 years actually elapsed between Cervantes writing part 1 and writing part 2. And he apparently had no original design to write part 2, except that someone else wrote it and like stole his story. So he took it back 10 years later. But the amount of time that passed, as far as we know in the book, Don Quixote's been laying around his house like a month. That's all. When Sancho shows up. And when they're like, should we let him know that we burned all the books? Right? And the priest and the barber come to check on him, but they said it was like a month. Does anyone want to correct me, or did I get it right? I think it's like altogether maybe 6 months. So or even less, but okay, giving Sancho every benefit of every doubt, we can understand how, since he's been through a lot, it feels like 20 years. Because like 20 years since you suggested that I was going to get my isle.
Yeah.
We can understand that he would feel like it's that. But that's when Don Quixote, this blows your mind. Don Quixote takes all of his, here, and I want this, and I want that, and Don Quixote knows darn well that's not how squires act. He puts up with all of it until factually Sancho gets it wrong. Then he's like, you are nothing but an ass. It was not even a month, yeah. Don Quixote's supposed to be out of his mind and doesn't know anything. Put up with all of that purposefully until Sancho goes and throws the 20-year. And at that point, Don Quixote's like, that's not real. It's not real. It's not 20 years. Oh, it's so confusing. Okay, so now we're going to reply to this ecclesiastic who just floored Don Quixote with saying that You're not a knight. There's no such thing. And all the things that you say you believe in, there's no such thing as those either. This is directly after the Duchess was praising Sancho as a wise and generous squire. So the Duke and the Duchess are buying it, and they want to hear the stories and all that. Ecclesiastic is like, no, this is doing damage. Just like the original priest was like, no, all of these books are doing damage, burn them. Cervantes is making a commentary on the priests of his time. They're not very helpful to the Christian cause, it doesn't sound like. Perhaps they're interested in something else. Okay, Coco.
Chapter 32 of Don Quixote's reply to his censor and other incidents serious and entertaining. So springing to his feet and trembling from head to foot like a man filled with mercury, Don Quixote stammered out hastily, "The place where I am, the presence I am in, and the respect I have, and have always had, for the calling your worship professes, hold and tie the hands of my just indignation. And so, for those reasons, and because I know, as everyone knows, that the weapons of gownsmen are the same as women's, the tongue, I will enter with the same weapon into equal battle with you, though I might have expected good counsel from you instead of infamous reproaches. Charitable and wholesome reproof requires different behavior and different language, but harsh and public reproach exceeds the bounds of just censure. For well-meaning rebukes are better uttered with gentleness than with asperity, and it is wrong without knowledge of the sin to proclaim the sinner bluntly a blockhead and a fool. Now tell me, your worship, for what follies that you have seen in me do you condemn and reproach me? And tell me to go home and attend to my household and to my wife and children, though you do not know if I have any or not. Is it enough to enter other men's houses by hook or by crook and rule their owners, and after a narrow upbringing, without more knowledge of the world than the district 60 or 70 miles roundly to lay down the law to chivalry and judge of knights errant? Is it perchance idleness and waste of time to wander through the world, seeking no pleasures but the austerities by which the virtuous ascend to the seat of immortality? If knights, grandees, noblemen, or the high-born were considered me a fool, I should take it as an intolerable affront. But that scholars, who never entered or trod the paths of chivalry, should set me down as a madman, does not affect me a jot. A knight I am, and a knight I shall die, if it please the Most High. Some travel over the broad field of proud ambition, others by the way of base and servile adulation, others again by way of deceitful hypocrisy, and a few by way of true religion. But beneath the influence of my star I journey along the narrow path of knight-errantry, in which exercise I despise wealth, but not honor. I have redressed grievances, set right wrongs, punished insolences, conquered giants, and trampled down fiends. I am in love, only because knights-errant are obliged to be so, and being so, I am not one of those depraved lovers, but of the continent and platonic sort. I always direct my purposes to virtuous ends, and do good to all and ill to none. Whether he who so purposes, whether he who so labors, whether he who so acts, deserves to be called a fool, let your highnesses decide, excellent Duke and Duchess.
Telling you.
By God, that's good.
I'm looking for something because of something that Doc White wrote. When Pauline and Mara and Chloe and I were reading this last time, a couple years ago. And I'm not finding it. I'm not finding Don Quixote descending into madness. I'm finding the opposite. In the old days, what would he have done, priest or not? They would have attacked him. But he starts out by saying, because of your office, I'm going to restrain my tongue. And because you know nothing of being out in the real world, and because you want to have a battle of tongues, I'm going to debate what you've just said by putting forth my reasons for what I am doing and why it shouldn't be called not real or foolish. Does anyone disagree with any of the reasoning that he just put forth or any of the claims that all he has done is forsaken any of the lower passions in order to seek truth, seek justice, love in a chaste way, help people, do harm to no one, let's go back to Master Peter, who was whoever who he freed from the bonds of his chains, right? Right? Is that a madman? I'm asking the question for 675 pages. Does that sound like the ravings of a madman? No. And did he approach it in an imprudent or unjust way? He knows he's talking to a priest. He knows the honor that he deserves. And so he's not going to let his anger fly, even though he's angry. He's simply going to say, here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. Why are you saying I don't exist, or that I should go back home, or that I'm a fool? Why? Wow. I'm just not finding madness. I'm not. Doc White says he's descending into madness in book 3. I'm not finding it. I'm thinking Doc White said it, it's coming. I'm not finding it. Are you? We've pretty much explained, or I feel like we've come up with a reason for the things that he's done. Like the lions, we can, yeah. Like, because he used to be mad, but now he's acting sane. But that's got to be insane, because before he was insane, unless now he's, which is the mad. I see what you're saying. I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue.
By God, that's good, cried Sancho. Say no more for yourself, my dear master, for there's nothing more in the world to be said, thought, or done. Besides, since this gentleman denies the very existence of knights errant, it is surprising that he doesn't know anything of what he is talking about. Are you perhaps, brother, asked the priest, that Sancho Panza they speak of, to whom your master promised an isle? I am, answered Sancho, and I deserve it as much as any one on earth. I'm one of your keep company with good men, and you'll be one of them. Yes, and of your not with whom you were bred, but with whom you're fed, and of your lean against a good tree and you'll get good shelter. I've lent on my good master, and I've been going about in his company for many months, and, God willing, I shall come to be like him. And if he lives, and I live, he'll have no lack of empires to rule, nor I of isles to govern.
Stop
No,
again.
of course
Sorry,
not.
sorry, stop again. What? This is the Sancho who just said, I want to leave because you haven't produced what you said you were going to produce and you haven't paid me. This is the Sancho who just said, I think I'll just sneak away because I don't want to have to argue with why I'm leaving, because I know I'm not leaving for a good reason. And now when someone attacks his master and his master explains, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, Sancho's like, yes, sir, Mr. Priest. I'm one of those idiots who you say follows a madman. And if I'm lucky, I'll be like him when I grow up. Okay, go ahead. Wow.
No, no, of course not, Sancho, my friend, interposed the Duke, for in Don Quixote's name I can offer you the government of an odd one of mine, and no poor one either. Go down on your knees, Sancho, cried Don Quixote, and kiss his excellency's feet for the favor. Sancho obeyed, and at the sight of him the priest got up from table, exclaiming in a great fury, By this habit I wear, I must protest that your excellency is as stupid as these two sinners. They may well be mad if the sane sanction their insanity. Your excellency may keep them company, but so long as they stop in this house, I shall stay in mine and refrain from reproving what I cannot remedy. And without another word or another mouthful, he went off, and the Duke and Duchess's entreaties were powerless to stop him. Not that the Duke said much to him, for laughter at his foolish burst of anger. But when he had stopped laughing, he said to Don Quixote, You have answered so nobly for yourself, Sir Knight of the Lions, that you can require no further satisfaction of him, since, though this appears an offence, it is not one at all, for as women cannot give offence, neither can ecclesiastics, as your worship knows better than I.
Can we just rewind just for a second? What just happened at the bottom of page 675? What? What happened? The Duke said, For in Don Quixote's name, I can offer you the government of an odd one of mine, and no poor one either. What?
He's gonna give Sancho a place as a governor.
Yes. Sancho just got his isle to govern, and it's not a poor one either.
They shouldn't complain about things that's so early. Just because they get right.
Or late.
Yeah.
Look, does anyone else feel good? I feel good. Did we think it would happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, don't stop believing, right? But did we really think it was gonna happen?
I mean, I think it's going to happen.
You did?
Yeah.
I can offer you the government of an odd one of mine. Now, is this an enchantment? Are the Duke and Duchess real? Are they real? With all their attendants, are we in a real place that is a castle? Is this true? This just happened to Sancho. Yes. When Sancho mentioned it in front of the Duke, defending Don Quixote, who he just wanted to leave. Have you ever noticed this happens in life?
Like,
Spiritually, you're trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, and you keep getting kicked down, and you're like, why am I even? I'm gonna give up. And the moment you're like, I'm gonna give up, suddenly something wonderful happens, and you're like, why did I doubt God? Why don't I just? Yeah, has this happened? Are you too young for that to have happened? I can't tell you how many times that's
No,
happened.
that
on
happens
Saturday.
a lot.
we already have a day.
What? Okay. Go ahead.
That is true, answered Don Quixote, and the reason is that one who cannot be offended can offend nobody. As women, children, and ecclesiastics cannot defend themselves, even if they are attacked, they cannot be affronted. For between an offence and an affront there is this difference, as your excellency knows better than I. An affront comes from one who is capable of giving it, gives it, and maintains it, but an offence can come from anyone without carrying an affront with it. Let us take an example. A man is standing carelessly in the street. 10 men with arms in their hands come up and strike him. He draws his sword and does his duty, but the number of his opponents is against him and prevents his fulfilling his purpose, which is to avenge himself. This man is offended, but not affronted, and this can be confirmed by another example. A man's back is turned, another man comes up and strikes him, and after striking him does not wait, but runs away. The other follows him, but does not catch him. The man who was struck suffered an offence, but no affront, for an affront has to be maintained. If the striker, even if he struck foully, had drawn his sword and stayed facing his enemy, the man who was struck would be offended and affronted at the same time. Offended because he had been treacherously hit, and affronted because his assailant maintained his action, holding his ground without turning his back. And so, according to the laws of the accursed duel, I may be offended, but am not affronted. For children cannot wound, and women do not generally do so, and so they have no call to maintain their position. The same applies to the men of religion, for these three classes of people lack arms offensive and defensive, and so, although naturally they are compelled to defend themselves, they have not the power to offend anyone. But although I just said that I might have been aggrieved, now I say no. That is impossible, for one who cannot receive an affront can still less give one. For which reasons I should not resent, and do not resent, what that good man said to me. I only wish he had stayed a little longer, so that I could have convinced him of his error in supposing that knights errants have never existed in the world. For if Amadis had heard him, or one of his countless lineage, it would have gone badly with his worship, I assure you. I'll swear to that, said Sancho. They would have given him a slashing that would have split him from top to toe like a pomegranate over an overripe melon. They were fine lads at putting up with such jests. My goodness, I'm sure that if Reynold of Montalban had heard that little man's words, he would have given him a slap on the mouth that would have kept him quiet for more than 3 years. No, he should have picked a quarrel with them and seen what he was like when they'd done with him. The Duchess was dying with laughter at Sancho's remarks, considering him madder and more entertaining than his master, and there were many at the time who shared her opinion. At last Don Quixote was calm, and the meal finished. As they were removing the tablecloths, 4 maids came in, one with a silver basin, a second with a jug also of silver, a third with 2 very fine rich towels on her shoulder, and the fourth with her arms bare to the elbow, bearing in her white hands white they were indeed, a round ball of Naples soap. The one with the basin went up and gracefully and without embarrassment placed it under Don Quixote's chin. He wondered at the ceremony, but silently assumed that it must be a custom of that country to wash the beard instead of the hands, and stretched his chin out as far as he could. At the same moment the jug began to rain on it, and the maid with the soap to set about it with such vigor that she raised snowflakes. The lather was as white as snow, not only on his beard, but over the docile knight's whole face and his eyes, so much so that he was forced to shut them. The Duke and the Duchess, who had been informed of none of this, were waiting to see how the extraordinary ablutions would end. Now when the barber maid had raised a handful of lather, she made believe that she had used up the water, and bade the maid with the jug fetch more. For Don Quixote would wait, on which the second maid departed, and Don Quixote remained the strangest and most ludicrous figure imaginable. All the spectators, and they were many, gazed at him, and seeing him with half a yard of neck more than commonly brown, his eyes closed, and his beard full of soap, it was a great wonder that they were discreet enough to conceal their laughter. The maids who were playing this trick kept their eyes lowered, and dared not look at their master and mistress, who were moved to anger and laughter at the same time, and did not know what to do, whether to punish the girls' presumption or reward them for the pleasure of seeing Don Quixote in that state. Finally, the girl with the jug came back, and they finished washing Don Quixote. The girl with the towels very deliberately wiped him dry, and making him a low obeisance and curtsy, all 4 of them together were about to leave the hall. But in case Don Quixote should tumble to the joke, the Duke called to the girl with the basin, "Come and wash me too, and see that you have enough water." The maid, who was shrewd enough, came and offered the basin to the Duke as she had done to Don Quixote, and they hastily soaped him and washed him thoroughly, leaving him dry and clean. Then they curtsied and departed. It came out afterwards that the Duke had sworn to punish their sauciness if they did not wash him as they had Don Quixote, but they cleverly made amends by soaping him in the same manner. Sancho paid great attention to these ceremonial ablutions, and said to himself, "Bless me, what if it's the custom in this country to wash squires' beards as well as knights? For upon my soul I've need of it, and if they were to shave me I should take it for a still greater favour." "What are you saying to yourself, Sancho?" asked the Duchess. "I was saying, lady," he answered, "that I've always heard how at other princes' courts they give you water for your hands when they clear away the tablecloths, but not lather for your beard. So a long life's a good thing, for you see a great deal. Yet they say, too, that those who live long have plenty of ill to suffer, though to suffer one of these washings is more like pleasure than pain." "Don't you worry, friend Sancho," said Duchess. "I will have my maids wash you and scrub you if need be." "I will be content if they do my beard," answered Sancho, "at least for the present, but for the rest heaven will provide in due course." "Butler," said the Duchess, "see what the good Sancho wants, and comply with his wishes in all respects." The butler replied that Sancho should be served in every way, and with that went off to dine, taking Sancho with him, while the Duke, the Duchess, and Don Quixote remained at table, talking of many different matters, all touching the profession of arms and of knight-errantry. The Duchess asked Don Quixote, since he seemed to have a good memory, to delineate and describe the features of the lovely lady Dulcinea del Toboso, who, according to famous reports of her charms, should certainly be the most beautiful creature in the world, even in all La Mancha. Don Quixote sighed on hearing the Duchess's request, and said, "If I could pluck out my heart and place it before your Highness's eyes on this table in a dish, I should relieve my tongue of the toil of expressing what is almost inconceivable, for in it your Excellency would see her completely portrayed. But why should I set out to describe and delineate the beauty of the peerless Dulcinea, exactly and feature by feature? That is a burden fitter for others' backs than mine, an enterprise which should occupy the pencils of Pharsis, of Timonthus, and of Apelles, and of chisels of Lysippus to paint and to carve her on wood, on marble and bronze. It would require the Ciceronian and Desmothenian rhetoric as well to praise her. "What does Desmothenian mean, Don Quixote?" asked the Duchess. "It is a word I have never heard in all the days of my life." "Desmothenian rhetoric," answered Don Quixote, "is as much as to say the rhetoric of Demosthenes, as Ciceronian is Cicero's, which two were the greatest rhetoricians in the world. "That is so," said the Duke, "and you have shown your ignorance by asking such a question. But all the same, Don Quixote would give us great pleasure if he would paint her for us, for I am sure that even in rough sketch and outline she will come out so fair that the fairest will envy her." "I certainly would," replied Don Quixote, "if the misfortune which recently befell her had not blotted her from my mind. So bad was it that I am readier to weep her than to describe her. For I would have your highness know that when I went some days ago to kiss her hands and receive her blessing, consent, and license for this third expedition, I found a different person from the one I sought. I found her enchanted and transformed from a princess into a country girl, from beauty to ugliness, from angel to devil, from sweet-smelling to pestiferous, from eloquent to rustic, from gentle to skittish, from light to darkness, and to conclude, from Dulcinea del Toboso to a Sayajian peasant girl." "God bless me!" exclaimed the Duke, in a loud voice as at this moment. "Who can it have been that did the world such a wrong? Who was it that robbed it of the beauty which delighted it, of the grace which charmed it, and the modesty which honored it?" "Who?" answered Don Quixote. "Who can it have been but some malign enchanter, one of the many that envy and persecute me, that accursed race, born into the world to obscure and obliterate the exploits of the good, and to light up and exalt the deeds of the wicked? Persecuted I have been by enchanters. Enchanters persecute me, and enchanters will persecute me till they sink me and my high chivalries into the profound abyss of oblivion. They damage and wound me where they see I feel it most. For to rob a knight errant of his lady is to rob him of the eyes with which he sees, of the sun by which he is lighted, and of the prop by which he is sustained. Many other times I have said it, and now I say it again. A knight errant without a lady is like a tree without leaves, a house without foundations, and a shadow without a body to cast it." "There is no more to say," said the Duchess. "But yet, if we were to give credit to the history of Don Quixote, which has lately been given to the world and to the general applause of mankind, we gather from it, if my memory is correct, that your worship never saw the lady Dulcinea, and that this same lady does not exist on earth, but is a fantastic mistress whom your worship engendered and bore in your mind, and painted with every grace and perfection you desired." "There is much to say on that score," replied Don Quixote. "God knows whether Dulcinea exists on earth or no, or whether she is fantastic or not fantastic. These are not matters whose verification can be carried out to the full. I neither engendered nor bore my lady, though I contemplate her in her ideal form, as a lady with all the qualities needed to win her fame in all the quarters of the world. These are spotless beauty, dignity without pride, love with modesty, politeness springing from courtesy, courtesy from good breeding, and lastly, high lineage, for with good blood beauty shines and glows with a degree of perfection impossible in a humbly born beauty." "That is true," said the Duke, "but Don Quixote must give me permission to say what the history of his exploits, which I have read, compels me to say. For though it is to be inferred that there is a Dulcinea in El Toboso or out of it, and that she is beautiful in the highest degree as your worship paints her, even then it does not appear that she compares in the matter of high lineage with the Orianas, the Alastrajeras, and Madasimas, and others of that breed, of whom the histories your worship knows so well are full. As to that I may say," answered Don Quixote, "that Dulcinea is the daughter of her works, the virtues improve blood, and that the virtuous and humble are to be more highly regarded and prized than the wicked and exalted. All the more so since Dulcinea has a vein in her which may raise her to be a queen with a crown and a sceptre. For the merit of one lovely and virtuous woman is sufficient to perform even greater miracles, and if not formally, at least virtually, she has greater fortunes stored within her." "It's my opinion, Don Quixote," said the Duchess, "that you proceed with great caution in all you say, and proceed, as they often say, with plummet in hand. Henceforth I shall believe, and make my whole household believe, and my lord the Duke too, if it is necessary, that there is a Dulcinea in El Toboso, and that she lives today, and is beautiful, nobly born and deserving that such a knight as Don Quixote should serve her, which is the highest compliment I know to pay her. But I cannot help entertaining one scruple, and bearing a certain grudge against Sancho Panza. This is my scruple. The aforesaid history relates that the same Sancho Panza, when he took our letter on your worship's behalf, found the said Dulcinea winnowing a sack of corn, and to be more exact, they say that it was red wheat. Now that detail makes me doubt the greatness of her lineage. To which Don Quixote replied, "My lady, your highness should know that all or most of the things which happen to me are out of the ordinary course of things which befall other knights errant. Whether they be directed by the inscrutable will of the fates or by the malice of some envious enchanter, It being a thing now proves that of all the famous knight-errants, one has the gift of being immune from enchantment, and another has flesh so impenetrable that he cannot be wounded, and had the famous Roland one of the 12 peers of France, of whom it is told that he could have only been wounded on the sole of his left foot, and even so only with the point of a stout pin, and with no other kind of weapon at all. So when Bernardo del Caprio killed him at Roncesvalles, seeing that he could not wound him with his sword, he lifted him from the ground in his arms and strangled him, thus recalling the death that Hercules dealt Antaeus, the fierce giant, whom, they said, was a son of earth. I mean to infer, from what I say, that I might possibly have one of these gifts, not of invulnerability, for inexperience has often taught me that my flesh is soft and by no means impenetrable, nor of immunity from enchantment, for I have known myself to be put into a cage in which the whole world would not have been strong enough to imprison me had it not been by virtue of enchantment. But since I freed myself from the spell, I am inclined to believe that there is no other which can harm me. So that these enchanters, seeing that they cannot use their evil practices on me, avenge themselves on the objects I love best, and seek to take my life by ill-treating Dulcinea, by whom I live. So therefore, I believe that when my squire bore her my message, they turned her into a peasant girl employed in the mean occupation of winnowing wheat, though I've affirmed that this wheat was neither red nor wheat, but grains of orient pearl. And to prove the truth of this, I should like to tell your highness that coming a little while since by El Toboso, I could never find Dulcinea's palace, and the other day, though Sancho my squire saw her in her proper shape, which is the most beautiful in the world, she appeared to me as a coarse and ugly peasant girl, and not at all well spoken, though she is the world's paragon of wisdom. Now, since I am not enchanted, and cannot be, according to sound judgment, it is she who is enchanted, injured, changed, altered, and transformed, through whom my enemies have avenged themselves upon me, and for her I shall live in perpetual tears till I see her in her pristine state. All this I have told you, so that no one may heed Sancho's words. Hold on, something just hit the window.
About Dulcinea's sifting or winnowing. For since they transformed her for me, it is no wonder that they changed her for him. Dulcinea is noble and well-born, springing from one of El Toboso's gentlemanly families, which are many, old, and most noble. And no doubt the peerless Dulcinea has no small share of their blood, for through her, her town will be famous and memorable in future ages, as Troy has been for Helen and Spain for La Cava, though hers will be a worthier title to fame. On the other hand, I would have your lordships understand that Sancho Panza is one of the drollest squires that ever served knight errant. Can we notice that probably for the first time ever, someone is asking questions about Dulcinea, but suggesting things that are unbecoming of her? And he just keeps reasoning his way through it. He hasn't even gotten mad. Now, maybe it comes off of his argument that you can't be offended by women because they have no arms. But he's not mad. He's just explaining. I mean, he's not angry. I should say he's not mad. He's not angry. He's just explaining it. And now he's going to, kind of as usual, blame Sancho. Sometimes his simplicities are so shrewd that it gives me no small pleasure to consider whether it is simplicity or shrewdness that prevails. Some rogueries in him convince him of knavery, and his indiscretions confirm him a fool. He doubts everything and believes everything. When I think he's going to tumble into folly, he comes out with the cleverest sayings which exalt him to the sky. In fact, I would not exchange him for any other squire, even if I were to receive a city to boot. And therefore I am in doubt whether it would be right to send him to that governorship with which your highness has favored him, although I see in him a certain aptitude for this governing business. And with a slight trimming of his understanding, he would do as well with some governorship as the king with his taxes. I'm going to keep going, but so he's looking at Sancho. He knows Sancho is a fool, but he also knows that Sancho is still with him, and he knows that Sancho keeps trying, and he knows that sometimes Sancho comes up with the most amazing sounding things. You're like, where did that come from? He also knows that Sancho can be a knave and can be shrewd, which means he's thinking through the wrong things that he does, not just that he trips into them because he's stupid.
So therefore, he's noble.
So in that case, he's not a fool. So we can do some malicious things. Who's Sancho?
The
Symbolically, us.
But what about
Only wouldn't trade him.
Don Quixote? If Sancho,
The other part of us, the body and soul.
yeah,
I wouldn't trade him, even if you gave me a whole country besides. Wouldn't trade him. Even though he starts out completely criticizing me, you have to understand what a simpleton he is, what an idiot he is, what a jerk he is. But I wouldn't trade him.
maybe we can talk about true friendship in this case. I won't trade him.
Maybe we can talk about true friendship, says Leo, because we're all imperfect and that doesn't make you stop loving somebody or stop being their friend. Maybe we can talk about true friendship. I really like that.
Yeah.
In fact, you could write your paper on that.
Mhm.
Because we just saw right before that Sancho defend Don Quixote, who he's so annoyed with that he wants to sneak off. And yet the minute someone goes after him, he's like, ooh, you're not talking about my Don Quixote that way. Priest or no priest.
And also in the first part, like when they all got beat up, Sancho never said, "I'm going to betray him," just go.
Right. And I don't know if he's going to be a good governor, but he might be better than some kings. Particularly as we know now through long experience that there is no need of great ability or much learning to be a governor. For there are 100 round here who can scarcely read and yet govern like so many goshawks. The whole point is to have good intentions and to desire to do right in everything. I guess I'm underlining that. For they will never lack someone to advise and guide them in their actions, like those unlettered military governors who have an assessor to pronounce sentence. I would advise him not to take bribes or forsake justice, and on certain other little matters which are lying on my chest and will come off in due course for Sancho's benefit and to the advantage of the isle he will govern. The Duke and the Duchess and Don Quixote had arrived at this point in their conversation when they heard so many voices and a great noise of people in the palace. And suddenly Sancho came into the hall in a great scare, with a linen strainer for a bib, and after him a number of lads, or rather kitchen boys and other underlings, one of whom was carrying a little bowl of water, from which its color and uncleanliness appeared to be dishwater. The boy with the bowl was following him and teasing him by trying most persistently to push it right beneath the beard, which another boy made as if to wash. What is this, fellows? Asked the Duchess. What is this? What are you trying to do to this good man? What? Do you not realize that he is the governor-elect? To which the barber scullion replied, this gentleman won't let himself be washed, as the custom is, and as the Duke my master was washed, and the gentleman his master. Yes, I will, answered Sancho in a great rage, but I should like it to be done with cleaner towels, with whiter soap, and less dirty hands. For there's not so much difference between me and my master that he should be washed with angels' water, and I with devil's lye. The customs of countries and princes' palaces are only good so long as they give no offense, but the washing custom here in use is worse than the flogging penitents. My beard's clean, and I have no need of such refreshings. And if anyone comes to wash or touch my hair, a hair of my head, I mean of my beard, speaking with all due respect, I'll give him as much of a punch as will leave my fist embedded in his skull. For these ceremonies and soapings seem to me more like practical jokes than hospitable civilities. For Sancho. The Duchess was dying of laughter at Sancho's angry protest, but it did not give Don Quixote much pleasure to see him so adorned in a street's towel and surrounded by so many kitchen underlings. Making a deep bow, therefore, to the Duke and Duchess, as if asking for their permission to speak, he calmly addressed the rabble. Ho there, knights and gentlemen, leave this lad alone and go back whence you came, or wherever else you please. For my squire is as clean as any other, and these bowls are no more fitting for him than your little narrow-mouthed drinking cups. Take my advice and leave him, for neither he nor I will abide this jesting business. So they get they're being made fun of? But Sancho caught his words out of his mouth and went on, no, let them come and make a mock of the stupid yokel. I'll stand for it as sure as it's now night. Let them bring the comb here or whatever they like and curry the spirit of mine. And if they get anything out of it which offends against cleanliness, let them give me a convict's crop. Here the Duchess remarked, still laughing, Sancho Panza is absolutely right, and will speak nothing but the truth. He is clean, and as he says, has no need to wash. And if our custom does not please him, his soul is his own. What is more, you ministers of cleanliness have been exceedingly remiss and careless. I do not know whether I should not say presumptuous, in bringing before such a personage and such a beard your wooden troughs and bowls and your dishcloths, instead of jugs and basins of pure gold and Holland towels. But indeed, you are a sorry, low-born crew, and like the scoundrels you are, cannot help showing the envy you bear to the knight-errant squires. She's constantly sticking up for them and thinking of them, the better of them. The roguish servants and even the butler who was with them thought that the Duchess was speaking seriously, so they took the strainer off Sancho's chest and slunk away abashed and left him. Whereat, seeing himself relieved from what had seemed to him extreme peril, he threw himself on the knees before the Duchess, crying, Great ladies can do great kindnesses, and I do not know how to repay the one your highness has just done me, except by having myself knighted, so that I may spend all the days of my life in the service of so exalted a lady. I am a peasant. Sancho Panza is my name. I'm married. I have children, and I serve as a squire. If in any respect I may serve your highness, I shall be no slower in obeying than your ladyship in commanding. Who does he sound like? Don Quixote about 500 pages ago. It is evident, Sancho, replied the Duchess, that you have learned to be courteous in the school of courtesy itself. It is evident, I mean, that you have been reared in Don Quixote's bosom, who must needs be the cream of courtesy and the flower of ceremonies, or ceremonies, as you call them. Good luck to such a master and such a servant. One, the pole star of knight-errantry, and the other, the star of squirely fidelity. Arise, Sancho, my friend, for I will reward your courtesy by making the Duke, my lord, fulfill his promise to favor you with the governorship as speedily as he can. But this conversation ceased, and Don Quixote retired to take his siesta. But the Duchess begged Sancho, if he had no great desire for sleep, to come and spend the afternoon with her and her maidens in a very cool room. Sancho replied that, although it was true that it was his custom to sleep for 4 or 5 hours on summer afternoons, he would, to serve her excellency, try with all his might to take no sleep at all that day, and would come in obedience to her command. And so he left the hall. Then the Duke renews his orders to his servants to treat Don Quixote as a knight-errant, and to adhere scrupulously to the style in which it is recorded that the knights of old were entertained.
Do you think that Sancho Panza is kind of like Donald Trump? I mean, your life experience, they conquered all the difficulties and finally become the king.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that as I was reading it, to be honest.
We're out of time.
Yes, we're out of time. We just finished. We'll do chapter 33 tomorrow.